Hey guys, it's time for another short story. You guys know I love my old Hollywood scandals, but I got my stories too. So let's get into this one. It's called Mr. Ruthers. We dumped him in the cold, hard ground and stood watching him for a while. Why didn't he just give up the money? That's all we were after. Just the money. Hands up! Josh yelled as we burst through the door. I walked inside and looked around the house. It was like stepping into a 1950s time capsule. My eyes went from the black and white television to the couch, and that's where I spotted Mr. Ruthers. He was sitting there, frozen with fear. I said, hands up, Josh repeated. I looked over at the old man, silently begging that he would just put his hands up and obey the command. Still, he sat frozen. At this point, Josh, who had always been the most hot-headed of our group, was getting impatient. He stalked towards Mr. Ruthers, but I grabbed his arm. Josh, calm down. He's just an old man. He's scared. Josh turned around and glanced at me before pushing my hand away. Hey, man, the old geezer has got to learn to jump when I say so. And if you don't want to be on the business end of this shotgun, you'd better shut your mouth. At this, I raised my hands and I backed away. This was turning bad, really bad. It was supposed to be easy. Mr. Ruthers, an old man from the neighborhood, never caused any problems. Yeah, he was supposed to be very easy. So why didn't he just do what he was told? Before I could think any further, a spray of blood brushed across my face. In shock, I turned to see what was happening, hoping and praying that I wouldn't see a corpse with half of its head missing, blown away from a shotgun blast. When I saw that Mr. Ruthers was still alive, I let out a sigh of relief. But that relief turned to horror when I noticed that Josh had started to beat him about the head with the heavy weapon. I ran to stop it. Josh, what are you doing, man? What the hell are you doing? It seemed like things were going in slow motion when he paused mid-swing and stepped back in almost a drunken state. I just wanted him to put his hands up, Josh said. He looked at me, and I saw a small hint of fear in his eyes. But before we could say or do anything else, we heard it. Money's in the back. It was Mr. Ruthers. In an instant, another windfall of relief washed over me. He was alive. His face was a bloody mess, and his head was swollen, but thank goodness he was alive. Thinking about what Mr. Ruthers said regarding the money, Josh and I scurried to the bedroom. Once there, we dumped drawers, flipped mattresses, and turned over sofas, but we didn't find anything. I bent down and started searching in what seemed to be a sock drawer. I wanted to make sure we checked every surface for money and jewels, because at this point, anything was better than walking out empty-handed. As I continued to find nothing, I became more desperate and eventually started unballing the sock rolls, searching even harder than before. I went from sock roll to sock roll. Still, I found nothing. Eventually, I glanced up to the dresser, where a picture caught my eye. It was Mr. Ruthers, a much younger version of him, but him nonetheless. It looked to be a photograph from the mid-1940s. In the picture, Mr. Ruthers stood alone, sporting a big, wide smile while waving one hand in the air. The guy was amazingly handsome in his younger day. In fact, he looked just like Rock Hudson. He even sported the same short quiff haircut that Rock Hudson had in the 1940s. I was lost in the photo when I heard a voice in the distance. Did you find anything? Kyle, I said, did you find anything? Josh yelled, breaking up my thoughts. No, man, no. No, there's nothing here, I replied, kicking the drawers around. We beat that old man up, dude. We cannot leave without something to show for it, Josh said, frightening me with his tone. I scanned the home with my eyes, wondering if there was anywhere else that we could look. Then I saw it. The bathroom. How could I not think of that before? There was probably a safe in there. Or he probably hid money at the top of his toilet like the drug dealers did in the movies. I hustled over to the bathroom and kicked the door open. And what I saw will possibly haunt me for years. It was Mr. Ruthers. Not the old Mr. Ruthers that was lying on the front floor. No, this was the Mr. Ruthers from the photo. That's right, young Mr. Ruthers with the big wide smile and one hand waving in the sky. Yes, he was waving at me this goddamn instant in the bathroom. This time, I was the one frozen in place. How could this be? What does this mean? What is going on? I could hear Josh shouting from the bedroom, asking me if I'd found anything, but I couldn't answer him. I couldn't do anything. All I could do was stand there looking at the supernatural event unfolding in front of me. Waving and smiling. Waving and smiling. That's all the young Mr. Ruthers was doing. And even though nothing about this situation was normal, I started to relax. Then, out of nowhere, the thing, or whatever it was, got into a running stance and turned to face me full on. Then, it took off running. That was enough to jolt me out of my frozen state, and I took off running also, running for my life. I ran past Josh, who was just now coming out to see what was going on. I ran past the real Mr. Ruthers, who was now lying motionless on the floor, and I almost ran past our car that was waiting outside. When I finally hopped into the driver's seat, I tried to start the engine, but the car wouldn't crank. Just then, I looked up to see Josh walking calmly to the door. "Dude, what the hell is your problem?" he screamed while banging on the window. I tried to explain, but my tongue was caught in my throat and nothing came out. Seeing how upset I was, Josh continued. "Look, man, I know you're scared. Nothing happened as planned, but now we have an even bigger problem on our hands." Mouth still clamped shut, I looked at Josh to see what he meant. He explained that on his way out of the house, he noticed that Mr. Ruthers was not moving. So he checked his pulse and found that he was dead. "Murder? Oh, no, I cannot go to prison. And neither can I," Josh shouted. I was so scared I hadn't even noticed that I had apparently begun speaking and had stated my thoughts about prison out loud. "Look, Kyle, neither one of us want to go to prison, so we need to bury the body," Josh said while looking around for witnesses. I sat in the car for a while longer, too frightened to go back in the house. But after some time had passed, I decided that I was more afraid of prison than I was of Mr. Ruthers' younger, ghostly self. So I went back into the house to help retrieve the body. That's how I ended up here, looking at his dead body in the cold, hard ground. Now that we dumped him, it was time to cover him with dirt. But before we could, I saw his eyes move. Yes, his eyes were freaking moving. And they weren't just moving from side to side. No, oh God, no. It was like they were tracing something. Like they were actually watching something in the sky. I hear Josh calling behind me, but I'm not going to stop running. He's yelling now, warning me about prison, telling me that he's going to kill me if I don't get my butt back there. But I don't care anymore. Something isn't right about Mr. Ruthers. And now, as I'm hearing Josh's blood-curdling screams in the distance, I know that I'm right. The end. I hope you guys liked my original story, Mr. Ruthers. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. And I am currently working on more old Hollywood scandals, as well as more short stories, as well as more weird deaths, as well as everything this channel is about. I love you guys so much. So please go ahead and like this video, share, subscribe, and do whatever you gotta do. And I'll see you all next time.